Today I show you how to create those cards with HTML and CSS. First of all, we create a div with the class card, and inside of this card we'll have an h2 that, for example, says my skills, and we'll also add a paragraph that has 50 words, for example, and we'll just use some placeholder words. So now let's go inside of CSS and start to target our card by using the .card notation. And now we'll say inside of here that we want to have a width of 40%. We want to have a color of white to have white text. We want to have text align of center to center our text. And we want to use some padding of 40 pixels for now. Let's use a font family of Gilsens MT whatsoever, but you can use pretty much anything. Let's go ahead and start to target our H2, and let's give it a margin bottom of 40 pixels, for example. Maybe that's a little bit too much, so let's add 20 pixels, and like this it should be perfectly fine. So let's create a background for our element, and we can do so by using the background property, and we'll say we want to have a conic gradient. And you don't have to do this, but this looks pretty cool in my opinion, so feel free to try it out. And we are going to define a start value and an end value. And the left one is basically the start value and the right one is the end value. And now let's choose a different value, and let's say we want to use 21, 21, 21, which is just darker gray if you want to say so, and let's use 24, 24 and 24 here, and that is a lighter gray. And now let's say we want to have the left value from 0 degrees to 180 degrees, and as you can see we now have a lighter gray on the left side and a darker gray on the right side. You can obviously use any colors you want, and I think this effect looks pretty cool, so I wanted to show it to you. So next up, let's create our border that is animated, and we can do so by using .card and now colon after to create an after element. We say we want to have a content that is basically empty, so we need no content at all for this one. We use position relative on the card element and position absolute on our card after element to position our after element, absolute or relative if you want to say so, to our card element. We're going to save this. We're going to define a background, and I just want to show you how this works. So we'll use a background of red for now, and I want to have an inset of 3 pixels for now, and as you can see we now have this red background. And now I want to show you how this works. We now have this red background, and if we use set index of -1, this is going to shift our card after element behind our card element. So this red background will now shift behind our card element, and you should see the content again. And I'm going to press save, and as you can see it's now behind. We need to use -3 pixels though for the inset, and now you can see our background is slightly bigger than our card. So we now have this red border, which is theoretically not really a border, it's theoretically just a background that is hidden behind our content. Now let's just use 1 pixel, but obviously you could also use 3 pixels, and I'll show you the difference in a second. And instead of a static background like using red, we're again going to use a conic gradient, and we'll copy our values from our background. So we take our background values and we'll paste them in here a couple of times, maybe like 6 times. Obviously you can do it as often as you want, and you'll see the difference anyways in a second. So now we can say we want to have the background color here for maybe 2 parts of the gradient, and now for the third part we want to go to yellow, for example. And as you can see we now have this yellow border. Now we're going to have 2 parts of dark gray background again, and then we want to change to red, for example. And we're going to save, and now we probably want to have 2 parts of gray again, and our third part is going to be blue, for example. So we select blue, and this is how it's going to look. Wait, I need a comma here, and now it works. Or it doesn't work because I have a typo here, and now it should work, as you can see. But maybe we need to move this one up. And yeah, this is how it can basically look like. So obviously the animation is still missing, and how are we going to do this? First of all, we can define a method that animates our border basically, and we can do so by using the from keyword inside of our conic gradient. And now we want to say we want to use a variable that is the angle variable, and we'll use this angle variable to animate this border. And we say whatever this angle is basically the angle of our gradient. And by animating the angle, basically, we move our gradient in a circle. And you'll see it in a second, and it will make sense to you. At least I hope so. Okay, so let's go and say we want to use add property to define the angles property, because we first of all need to define it. We say we want to define the angles property. We want to use a syntax, and this syntax is basically the angle syntax, like so. Now we want to say that we want to have an initial value of 0 degrees, and we basically want to have a full rotation, so we are going from 0 degrees to 360 degrees. And we'll have inherits of false. Now we can use add keyframes. We use an identifier. That identifier could be rotate, for example, and this is basically the animation we are going to create, and we're going to create an animation from an angle of 0 degrees to an angle of 360 degrees, because as I already mentioned, we want to have a full rotation. Now we're going to save this, and now we'll take this animation. We're going into our after cut. We're going to use animation, rotate, 4 seconds for one full animation. We want to have a linear animation, so the animation should progress at a constant pace. And we want to have infinite for the loop time, because it should loop basically forever. And I have a typo right here. We need to use dash dash angle, and now it's going to animate once we save. And if you want to have a cool glow effect around this border, you can do so by using this exact same syntax, but we are going to replace the after selector with the before selector. And now we're going to save, and instead of having this exact same syntax, we are just going to add one property, which is the filter property. We're going to add a blur, and we can obviously use a blur of 20 pixels, which is a lot and probably will look terrible, but this is something you can do, and actually to me it looks a lot better than I expected. But you can also use a smaller number, like 3 pixels for example, and now you just have a subtle blur. And obviously you can change the inset however you want. You can, for example, use 4 pixels, and now you have a much bigger inset. Obviously you would need to change it right here as well, and now you have this effect, for example. So you can create whatever effect you want, and some of them look really cool, some of them, yeah, probably don't.